INEC requested the executive for the sum of 189.2 billion naira for the 2019 elections. And that is exactly the amount Mr. President has requested the National Assembly to appropriate. The issue is how much of it is coming out of supplementary appropriation in 2018 and how much of it is going to be taken in 2019. But this is not a matter for INEC. How the money is sourced is a matter between the National Assembly and the executive. So, Mr. Chairman, there is no further issue to raise as far as INEC is concerned. Only to remind this joint committee that from now to the 2019 general elections is 182 days, 20 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, each time you...
I don't know whether you have read the President's letter or the Presidential Liaison Officer. I think maybe you need to explain to us further the reason why Mr. President divided this budget into two. Because specifically, Mr. President said in 2018, he needed 140-something billion to be approved. And divided again, he said, at the other side of the budget, about 40-something billion is coming under 2019 budget. It's clear on this letter. I don't know whether the Presidential Liaison Officer, he has read this letter. So just explain to us, what is the reason why the President divided this budget? One, 2018. Then another one, he said, because of financial constraint, that the other side will be captured when the 2019 budget is coming. The letter, that is what the letter said. So I think we need to explain this thing to Nigerians and to the committee so that we'll be able to know where we're going.
No, hold on. Maybe we'll take...
The chairman of INEC. You've clearly explained the position, and there's no contention with regards to the figures presented by INEC and Mr. President's letter. There's no contention about that. But my concern is if by your proposal that this committee should appropriate the whole 189 billion, now the fear of Mr. President will not be addressed in the sense that in one part of his letter says that because of constraints of funding of that 46.5 billion, that is why he's putting it, suspending it for now. So what I'm suggesting, in my view, the way out of this, we can consider the 143 billion as proposed by Mr. President, and there's nothing that stops Mr. President tomorrow by sending another request. Yes, for the same request, for the same amount. Now, the issue is this. If this committee appropriates the 189 billion, the budget size of 2018 will shoot by that difference of 46.5 billion, which is the fear of Mr. President. Thank you.
Based on interaction, when you bring a budget, you panabit it, it doesn't go back, it doesn't come out the way it came in. So the Parliament, in its opinion, could do justice to this matter. But as far as we are concerned, we are working with the document presented by Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was very, very, very disturbed and indeed concerned when we had our deliberations yesterday. And I had the opportunity to think this through all through the night. First, I want to commend you, Mr. Chairman, for your wisdom, that's uncommon wisdom, in deciding overnight to invite the Minister of National Planning. Even if you had not invited him to share this clarification with us. Mr. Chairman, my position has always been, contrary to what some of my colleagues, especially my colleague from the House, Honorable K, had said, the request of Mr. President here, the request is 189. It is how it is to be split that is determined in this letter. But otherwise, he requested for the 189 that INEC asked for. And moving beyond that, Mr. Chairman, we are a committee on INEC. We are not the committee on appropriation. I think the issue before us is whether or not the budget of 189 billion submitted by INEC is worthy of approval. We're supposed to scrutinize it and make a determination whether to approve or not. It is left for the Committee on Appropriation to deal with this issue of whether or not the 45.6 should come in 2019, or it should come by way of 2019, or whether it should come as a component of environment from the 578 billion plus. That is not a matter for us here as a committee on INEC. It's a matter for us in a committee on appropriation, which some of us have the privilege to serve in. So I want to thank you, the Honorable Minister. I think the clarification which we will otherwise request, at the appropriation committee, you've already given it to us here, that yes, within the 2018 budget, we can actually delve into that 578 billion naira and make this appropriation from 189 billion. Mr. Chairman, this election is very, very, very crucial. We want INEC to deliver a free, fair, and credible election. Every day, the chairman of INEC appears before us. He's always threatening us and intimidating us by giving us the dates and minutes and hours left. And some of us are actually intimidated, We do not want to give him any excuse not to perform. So I think with the clarification given by the Minister of National Planning, we should go ahead and consider this budget of 189 billion naira. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Honorable Minister.
President's letter. Everything I have said, one, that the President has considered the 189 billion and has recommended the 189 billion for your consideration. This is in the letter. I also said that the President in his letter indicated where he wanted the environment to come from. He said, spoke the farm project for the new projects, totaling 578 billion. He says so in the letter. And the letter, this was attached to the letter, this schedule. So I'm sure you will get it if it's attached. And we can provide copies if you require them. I suppose maybe it's the appropriation committee that would actually, the appropriation committee is the ones who will require this. So the appropriation committee, they would require this, they would look into where to source the funding. And so everything that I have said is from the President's letter, consistent with the President's letter. And the President said, do not increase the overall size of the 2018 budget because of funding constraints. But if you reallocate from this schedule, you are not increasing the size of the 2018 budget. So provided you do not increase the size of the 2018 budget, you have kept to the President's request. So provided you don't increase it, but that, as was indicated, is an issue that really more the appropriations and the finance will consider and look at. And I'll also be available to appear before them should they require my appearance. So what I want to say is that it is the letter, and I'm going by the letter, so there's no need to ask for any additional from the President. This letter says it all. This letter speaks about 189 billion for INEC. That's what the letter says. So if you consider 189 billion for INEC, you're keeping to the letter. However, should you decide to go with the 143 billion, that is also within the letter. It is really your discretion. But everything is here in the letter, and it is for your discretion to determine how you want to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, for further planning, to essentially explain to us, and the reason why we said we wanted this clarification was nothing other than concern. This committee is concerned. The National Assembly is concerned. Nigerians are concerned. We have a budget of supplementary budget requested by Mr. President of 143 billion. The balance of the 45 billion he said was going to be serviced in 2019 budget. But our concern was that by 2019 budget, maybe the elections would have been over. That was why we said we needed clarification. We were concerned about it. So we're not fighting anybody. We are not here to drag. We are not here to play politics. We are here to find solution that will make Nigeria better, that will provide solutions for effective, free and fair election. That's it. So this is the baseline of this meeting. And we have gotten the message from the Minister of National Planning. And it is left for this committee now to decide. We have the powers to decide. We decide what we want to do. And this is a joint committee. So we've heard from them. And I think I've made myself very clear. But if there's anything again, two more.
Yes, thank you very much. I think what is good and what is bad is bad. This letter, like you rightly said, speaks from both sides of the divide. Mr. President had talked about the prevailing fiscal constraints, which was the reason why he had asked for the 143 billion. And he had also said clearly that he will include in the 2019. So in order to allow the 2018 present budget, he accommodated 143. And what I think we should be doing is for INEC to look at what they submitted. Nobody is disputing the total amount approved by Mr. President. Look at the total amount, look at the 143 that Mr. President has requested from the environment and the supplementary. Go with your priorities, then we'll work on that. If the 46.6 billion that is to come in 2019 is required in December, 45 billion is required even in November, October, Mr. President can again send another letter. We cannot now say we have to go beyond what Mr. President has said by appropriating the 100. Nobody is disputing the total amount. It's going to come to INEC. We're concerned about it. But for us to do our job as we have cut the vacation short, Mr. President has asked for 143 billion. And we should be able to tell INEC to say from the 189 which is before us, tell us the priority that covers 143 and let us begin to work on that. That's my opinion. And it's clear in the letter.
It's very, very clear. And the explanation made by the Minister of Budget and Planning is very clear, very straightforward, and unambiguous. All he said that what they want is 189. Now, if now we're looking for the rivers, he said we can go there, buy from 578 billion and get the money. So what explanation do we need? We have got every information we need. For us now to ask them to give us priority, I don't think it's proper. Because we have got what we want, the package is there. The entire package is there. We don't want anything. This is why we're going to the place. If we need anything, let it be finished. Let it be finished. If there is anything we need, maybe we need authorization so that at least we have this. That's it. That's my take on this.
Mr. Chairman, this is I said because today, Mr. Minister of Budget and Planning, you are holding a document which you said is from that document that we are going to source the money for funding of INEC. And to all of us, I don't know whether any of us has that document and the project. Therefore, if we know what I'm saying, if it is not enough, that's why I said it's complicated now. Therefore, that document has to go to appropriation so that the appropriation will do the arithmetic and give us the funding so that it's simple at all. Without appropriation, looking at the documents, whatever we do here, we don't even we don't know where to remove it.
Senator Sabi Abdullahi.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, with due respect to all the arguments being made, I think we need to be very clear about why we're here. It's very obvious as a committee, ours is to look at what exactly INEC requires. And within this context, our recommendation will now go to the Committee on Appropriation. How it is going to be funded is what will happen at that level of the Committee on Appropriation. So within this context, I want to submit that we are very, very clear and unambiguous on the fact that that 189 is what INEC is submitting as its requirement for the 2019 general election. I think we are not in doubt about this. The only point is, how do you source these total sums of money? And at what point do they get it? Under the first batch, 2018, or under the second, or the addition we are now making, saying it will be very, very wise, economical, for us to actually consider the entire thing now, and even leave the payment perhaps to what the appropriation committee may be recommending. So I think for me, there is no ambiguity on this. And we should be very clear that the request is 189 for the 2019 general election. And 2019 general election has just been born from today in accordance with INEC timetable, and we definitely die by the end of March when the last election for 2019 general election takes place. So what we are saying, and that is the concern Mr. Chairman raised earlier, to the effect that I think we should look at what is possible. And that's why if we work together, the executive and the legislature, in the interest of Nigerians, we will be able to provide a solution so that INEC will not be encumbered by our technicalities as we see it from this particular point of view. So I think I want to cause or seek the indulgence of my colleagues for us to be pleased, nationalistic about this, so that at the end of the day, we'll actually provide a solution to this problem. If we are convinced that the 2019 general election funding request from INEC is okay, I think we should just, leave it at that based on the explanation. Let's bring this session to end so that we can go back to our own committee level and deliberate on what we think is feasible within this context, and then make our recommendations to the appropriation committee. I think that's my submission.
Our colleagues, and it has to do with the Constitution. It's a provision, section 81, subsection 4A, and I read to you. It says the amount appropriated by the Appropriation Act for any purpose is insufficient, is only for any purpose if insufficient, or A, a need has arisen for expenditure for a purpose for which no amount has been appropriated by the Act, a supplementary estimate showing the sums required shall be laid before each house of the National Assembly, and the heads of any such expenditure, shall be included in the supplementary appropriation bill. What am I saying in this? This is, I'm quoting section 81, subsection 4A. Now, what it says is very, very clear. We cannot sit and say these are the sources, meaning these are the subheads that should go. It is the responsibility of the executive to identify these subheads. This is what this provision says. I'm saying this so that I'll draw the attention of my colleagues saying it is that we have a package, we just pick from here and there. No, we will be going against this provision of the Constitution.
We have had enough explanations from the minister, and we are convinced about what Mr. President has requested. And let me remind us that we have the right of appropriation. We can even decide to say that the entire money will come from the 2018 budget, and we refer to the appropriation committee. And during the leadership meeting, the two chairmen of appropriation, they were consulted. That document of the schedule is not for us, it is for the appropriation committee. Our concern, as we have earlier said, is the INEC budget. And we can tell Mr. President that we want the entire amount of money to be sourced from the 2018 budget, in view of the fact that by the time the budget will come, the 2019 budget will come, elections, issues are in the air, will be in the air. And so we may not have time to come back and consider it thoroughly. So we would want to consider it the way we want it. And the way we want it, we will discuss it here. So we know that the actual amount is 189.2 billion naira. And so we thank you, Honorable Minister, for the explanation. And we will also decide on when to reconvene. The chairman will tell us when to reconvene to reconsider what INEC has brought to us. And then, in view of the time factor too, we will assure Nigerians that we will work, assiduously to make sure that INEC, yes, even during Salah, this is a national court, INEC budget is looked into expeditiously. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The liaison officer, I want to thank you most sincerely for your time and for these clarifications. This is the People's House, and in the National Assembly, everybody has his right. Minority will have their say, and majority will have their way. So many members here belong to different committees. Number one, all of us are members of the Committee of the Whole. Number two, there are some members who are members of appropriation that are here. So when they talk, maybe they're talking from their background representing appropriation. And there are some members of labor. So when they talk, they are representing the masses.
And the Constitutional Review Committee.
And the Constitutional Review Committee as well. So I want to thank everybody here. We have the prerogative as a committee to look into all these details, having gotten all the clarifications we require. We will now sit down as a committee and decide at the end of the day which one to use. The details that we have one details for now, but we will decide which one we want to use. Are we going to go by 143 or we're going to go by 189? It is our prerogative as a committee to decide that. So let me make this loud and clear. And I want to assure INEC chairman and the minister and the liaison officer that we called everybody here so that we will be seen to be transparent. No ambiguity. We are open so that Nigerians will see this thing clearly. We don't want politics played. This is not where to play politics. We are talking about national interest here. And when we talk about national interest, we should all be united in order to move our country forward. So I thank you on this note. No questions are going to be answered again. The press have taken whatever they needed to have taken, and this meeting is thereby adjourned sine die.